Hey you guys, we're making fried rice today. I'm just gonna get right into it. You have to start with rice that's already cooked and cooled off. As you see, mine is really steamy. It just came out of the rice cooker. So I'm gonna put it in the fridge and prep my other ingredients. All right, now that we've got our rice put away to get cooled off, I'm gonna start with my other ingredients. I'm gonna go right into my veggies, which are green onions and carrots. I like to cut the majority of the white end, as you'll see in the corner of the cutting board, off of the green onion. So you're using mostly all like that pale green and dark green part at the end, at the other side. I like to just kind of bunch them up together, get my fingertips out of the way, and cut slant or diagonally so that they look kind of cool that way in the recipe. Now I have, as I'm finishing that, I'll just explain my carrots. I actually cheated and I ran my carrots through my electric food processor to shred them. And honestly, that just saved a lot of time in this whole preparation deal. You can chop your carrots thin, you can dice them, you could grate them with like a cheese grater, or shred them. But I really like the consistency of shredded carrots rather than diced carrots in this recipe. So you can see that's what I've done. What I haven't mentioned yet is that in this video, I have the recipe doubled because my family's gonna eat this for dinner. And I was worried that one serving size of the recipe wasn't quite enough. So here I've got my 4 eggs that I'm gonna whisk up. And now I'm gonna get to my oil. Now on your recipe, it says that the oil needs to be divided. That means, if you remember from a few labs ago, that we've got some of it we're gonna use for one thing and some of it we're gonna use for another thing. So the first dish I have is the oil for the egg, to cook the egg. Now remember, I'm doubling my recipe. You're just gonna put 1 tablespoon in that first dish and 2 tablespoons in that second dish if you're not doubling. But because I'm doubling the recipe, I'm gonna go ahead and put 2 in the first one and 4 in the second one. And then with my soy sauce, it does not need to be divided, but again, I am doubling my recipe. So I'm gonna do 3 tablespoons and then another 3 tablespoons. And I just didn't have a big enough container to do all 6 of those tablespoons in. So that's why I stopped and got a different one. Now, I will say that the other reason I did another dish was because I wasn't quite sure with doubling the recipe if that would be too much soy sauce. And as we all know, whenever you're adding something salty or really sweet, you can always add more, but you can't take it out if you've added too much. So I really wanted to make sure I wasn't overdoing it right at the beginning. All right, now that we have everything prepped, we can start cooking. The prep for this recipe is really the longest part. The cooking is so fast and easy. I'm gonna start with a non-stick skillet with my 1 tablespoon of vegetable oil. I'm gonna get that nice and warm on medium-high heat. And remember, sorry, mine was 2 tablespoons of oil because again, I've doubled it, but if you're not doubling the recipe, it's just 1 tablespoon of oil and 2 eggs. Mine was 2 tablespoons of oil and 4 eggs. Now, a really cool way to make sure that the oil is the right temperature is if you put a wooden spoon down at the bottom and you see some bubbles starting to form, then you know that your oil is getting nice and warm but not too hot. All right, I really want to make sure that oil is covering that pan because I'm actually not gonna move this egg around at all. I'm just gonna let it sit in the pan. I'm just gonna distribute it kind of evenly through the pan by shaking the pan and by kind of lifting up the edges to let the egg kind of run underneath the part that's cooked. And this is a little bit of a process, and you'll see what the end result looks like. It's all about appearance in this recipe, to be honest. And when we cook an egg like this, we can slice it into nice little ribbons. And rather than just scrambling it up and put scrambled bits of egg in, which is totally fine. If you want to do that, you can do that. But I really like how it looks, and this is a more traditional way to cook egg for fried rice, is to just cook it in a thin layer, let it sit until it's completely set. Don't worry if there's a little bit of glossy on the top, because when you put it back in your fried rice at the end, that stuff will cook right out. So again, I'm just kind of letting whatever is uncooked on the top run off to the side, and I'm just gonna let it sit. All right, now you've got a little bit better view of what that egg looks like. It was just a little bit too bright there. But we've got, a little bit of glossy left, but again, I'm not overly concerned about that, because after I cut up the egg and put it in the fried rice at the very end, all that's gonna cook off. All right, now all I have to do is slide this out onto a clean cutting board and then chop it up into my ribbons. All right, I'm all set to go to finish off my recipe. All I have to do is cut my egg into the pieces that I, think would be like appropriate for bite-sized pieces of egg. So I like to go all the way through one side and just cut them into little ribbons and then cut those into little strips. All right, and then remember I've got the remainder of my oil and my soy sauce and my veggies, and then I can get, as soon as my egg's all ready, I can get right to cooking the rest of that stuff. And you can do all this, remember, while your rice is cooling down from pre-cooking it. All right, so the remainder of my oil goes back, and I used a bigger nonstick pan than the last one for the egg. And even that is a lot for a doubled recipe, or is a little bit small, for a doubled recipe. But I've got my oil in there. I know it's nice and warm. I'm gonna get started on cooking my vegetables. And I actually time-lapse through this quite a bit, just as a forewarning, just to let you know it does take a little bit longer to cook the veggies so that they're nice and, crisp, tender. But another reason why it's so nice to have shredded carrots is because they cook really quick. All right, and then I just started with a little bit of, like half of the portion of soy sauce. And I went and put those right in the carrots and the green onions. And again, I'm gonna let those cook for a couple more minutes on about medium to medium-high heat. All right, and just remember, you don't want to turn your vegetables into mush. You really want them to resemble vegetables still when you get them in with the fried rice. So just be careful not to overcook them at this point, so that they still, taste like crisp, like carrots and green onions. All right, and then once you're nice and simmering, you can start adding your rice. And I would recommend adding about maybe half to maybe 3/4 of it at a time, or at first, because it's just going to be really hard to incorporate into the rest of your vegetables. It's really helpful also to have a straight edge flipper or wooden spoon so that you can kind of break that rice up and incorporate it into the carrots and the green onions. All right, I time-lapsed the rest of adding my rice, but as you can see now, it's all nice and incorporated. There's only a few little, spots where there's clumps of white rice, and those will continue to cook out. Now I made a little bit of room in my pan to add some green peas, and you can go straight frozen green peas. You do not need to thaw them. In fact, I wouldn't thaw them, otherwise they're just going to become super mushy at the end of, this recipe. And I'm not actually a huge green pea fan, but they do add color and a little bit of texture to this recipe. So again, totally optional. Oh, there's Chuck in the background. He's eating some green peas that I dropped on the floor. Say hi, Chuck. Anyway, that's literally second to last step, is adding your frozen green peas. And then you're gonna finish with your cooked egg. And then you can season it. You can taste it. You can season it with more soy sauce if you want to. Kind of an interesting tidbit. I'm not really sure if this is a thing or not, but my mom always used to add a little bit of white sugar to her fried rice. Maybe to counteract, some of the salty in the soy sauce. I'm not sure. I've not gotten in the habit of doing that, but if you want to try it, you certainly can. All right, just to let you know, as I'm wrapping up here, we're gonna have our fried rice tonight with some frozen pot stickers that I already bought from grocery outlet, and it's gonna be awesome. Should be a complete meal. See you later.